Welcome back to the Field Advisor podcast. I'm Kelsey Litchfield today here with our Illinois Soy Envoys who are busy across the state, planting, wrapped up in some places. I think in others, they're wrapping up. Others are finished. Others are almost done. I'm curious up north what's happening as well. So we'll do a quick roundtable format today and talk about what's going on. Jamie, I want to start with you down in Southern Illinois because I know you guys have been done planting for a while now.
Yeah, no, good morning. And it's good to have a little bit of a morning in the office after we've been running pretty hard here recently, but have got quite a bit of rain here in the last few days across much of Southern Illinois. Although I will say, if you do go a little bit further south, I grew up around Randolph County and around that neck of the woods and over towards just south of Mount Vernon, it's extremely dry, which is kind of crazy because just to the north of us, they got about 6 inches of rain. So it is a little bit of hit or miss in some different pockets. But yeah, for the most part, wrapped up planting here. We had probably one of the earliest plantings on record across much of Southern Illinois. Folks that got in there early are definitely reaping the benefits now, as May historically has been kind of Mother Nature has really won May here in the last couple years in Southern Illinois. So the crop, I would say, has really kind of been stalled out. We've been cold, we've been wet in a lot of cases, but here in the last week, we've caught sunshine, we've got rain, and we've got heat. So stuff has really taken off. Wheat's progressing nicely. I'm hearing some folks say about June 10th, they might anticipate starting to cut wheat or get in some of those early varieties. And then soybeans, I actually saw my first soybean flowers yesterday, which was pretty crazy for the end of May on those March 26th planted beans that have just started to take off, like I said, here in the last few days. Corn, a lot of corn's about V5. A lot of folks are making post applications of their herbicides where they did have some dry fields. But we are seeing a lot of water hemp. So it's just, another classic. Some places need it to dry up so we can get back in the field, and some places really need to catch a rain to help get this crop off and moving.
That's great. Any other questions that you're getting from farmers as we're heading into late May?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of questions right now of just about herbicide programs and certainly from a residual herbicide standpoint, a lot of beans, especially planted early, where we stayed cold and, in those cooler conditions, we saw a lot of crop response out of some residual herbicides. So trying to make sure that, those beans are getting growing and making sure that we're protecting them from water hemp starting to emerge, especially as we've gotten a lot of rain in certain areas, and we're still a little ways to canopy for sure.
Let's go a little bit more north of you to Tim Laatsch, like the watch. Tim Laatsch, like the watch. Oh my gosh, Tim, I'll eventually get it. But Tim in Effingham County, what's going on in your neck of the woods?
Well, Kelsey, the big story here has been rain. We had 6.72 inches in April, and so far 5.09 inches in May, and punctuated by some very large, events, 2 and 3 inch events. And so really what we've had here is kind of the story of two springs. We had early April, which was dry and very warm, and we saw a lot of field work and planting get done in that window. A lot of the beans planted in that second week or first week of April are looking excellent. They're pushing third trifoliates now. Corn planted in that window is also excellent for the area. I would say ranging V4-ish to V5, somewhere in that stage. And then it turned very cool and very wet. That has kind of been the story since then. So we've had a much slower accumulation of growing degree days and had a very short window to work, let's say April 22nd through 24th, where, some crops got planted, but all of those crops have really struggled to emerge. But I would say all have made it up. Both corn and beans planted in that window have made it up, maybe with some thin spots here and there, but I think they will be keepable stands now that we're pushing, past May 20th here. Some of that corn had over 5 inches of rain on it prior to emergence, so you can imagine what kind of and nights in the 30s. So really struggled to get out of the ground. And we really had no working window since then until last week. We had about 3 days of suitable for field work last week, and that's really the only window we've had in May. And corn planted in that window has now had over 3 inches of rain on it as well prior to emergence. So just really fighting the weather here. Wheat, as Jamie said, has come through flowering, filling heads now. Looks really good, but I have noticed the appearance of what appears to be some spring-infected barley yellow dwarf virus. About 5% incidence, or 5 to 10, depending on the field you're looking at. And it really kind of shows up as mottled yellowish purple flag leaves. You often see it in clusters in the field. And, it's probably, with the prevalence we're seeing, probably going to be a minor, maybe 3 to 5% yield reduction. And there's really no fix for it. That's vectored by aphids that are now long gone. So there's really no opportunity to correct or remedy the situation. We just have to live with it. And really no major other pest issues in corn and beans that I've seen, other than a fair bit of residual herbicide injury in both corn and beans on those crops that kind of struggled to get out of the ground. So that's kind of the story here in South Central Illinois.
Thanks, Tim. Let's move west of you and go to Matt Montgomery out of Chatham, Illinois.
Yeah, I would say, 90%, of course, of the crop in most of the area. Probably talking about on the order of 20% of the soybeans getting to that third trifoliate stage, or maybe second trifoliate, somewhere around there. Again, a good portion of the crop, probably a good 20% of the corn crop, that's getting to about 5 leaves, starting to get some nice green color across the countryside. Fully expect here in the next week and a half or so, you're going to see some dark green coming into some of those fields as well. Other good news, so that's a little bit of the good news, Kelsey, but other good news, Jamie mentioned and Tim mentioned the wheat crop. It continues to roll along. I'm blown away by how fast this thing is moving. We're way ahead of schedule for what we usually see for wheat at this time of year. And then between the rains, a few inch rain that happened kind of midweek last week, and then rain, here over the weekend, beginning of this week. In between all that, people managed to get some alfalfa cut and baled. They squeezed that in real quick and tried to make that happen. I think maybe, Kelsey, one of the things that I've noticed over the last week is some of that ladder planted bean crop, probably seeing a fair amount of PPO injury on that. We have some stands that look good if you're just eyeballing it, but when you get down on your hands and knees and dig some of those up, some quarter-inch, eighth inch deep girdles from PPO injury. And so some stand that may slide in some cases, in some fields, 30 to 60%. That's not happening in every field. But it's just an example of why it's probably a good idea to go out and dig around and get a feel for what you're seeing, so you can decide exactly what you need for overseeding to get some stands back up where they need to be.
So farmers will go back in and replant if need be?
I think overseed probably more often than replant. Probably coming back in.
Okay.
In some cases 80 to 100K or something like that. It just depends on the hit that you saw in the field, and trying to spruce those stands back up.
Thanks, Matt. We'll come back to you here in a little bit. We're working our way north, Brandon. I'll get to you in a second, but we got to stop first in Champaign County, and then we'll head to the western side. Scott with GDM Seed. Scott, how are things going in Champaign County?
Things are going pretty good. I think I can take a little note from Jamie and from Jim. I feel like I can take a little mixture of both of what they said about the weather. I feel like it's either been really wet or really dry up here. And also variation of precipitation as well. So there'll be times where the north side of Champaign County will get 3/10, and the south side will get 2 inches. And that was the case here this past Monday, where my wife was working down in the field in South Farms at the university, and she was rushing to get out of the field and got 2 inches of rain, and I saw hardly anything up at the house near Ford County. So, and then with that as well, the fields will be wet and the farmers will be out of the field for a while, and then it'll dry up very quickly, and then we'll have a dust storm. We've had a handful of those over the last month, varying in dust. So there's been a lot of that. I'd say overall, we're probably 95% total acres planted in this area. There's still a couple guys finishing things up who are notorious for being the last ones out of the field, but there's nothing wrong with that. And as far as stages go, I think we're just a little bit behind what Matt was saying. I think beans were probably around V2 at the earliest, for the earliest planted beans, and for the corn, probably V4, V3 is what we're looking at. But there's a few guys the northeast of me. There's guys that have a notoriously tougher ground, and one thing, talking to them, they've really liked this weather. For them, they were able to get a little bit of moisture, work the field, plant it, and then again it dry out. But then when they were hitting another field, it'd rain, and then they'd work it, and then so they really liked this back and forth. The ground wasn't too tough for them, for what they're used to. So they were happy with it, even though it really strung things out this year for most people.
Yeah, sitting here May 20th, I don't think it seems like it should be much later than that, but
It does, yes.
Looking at the calendar, we're still sitting good. And I know, Brandon, we talked last week, farmers in your area finally started planting corn within this past week.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with the bads and end with the goods, I think, on my side. So some of the bads here, obviously soil temperatures, soil conditions, in my opinion, have been less than ideal for, I would say, about 85% of the crop that was planted in Knox County here or the surrounding area. Guys just got excited. We had some really, really nice conditions in March, and guys were getting antsy, and then we just got excited. And so we started putting crop into, we thought we were running out of time for some reason, but we just went. And so that's kind of been a struggle. We've had some crops sit in the ground 3.5 weeks before it comes up, which is not really ideal in our area with the nice black soils that we have. We've had kind of what I'd call a roller coaster of weather. We've had, I think the biggest challenge for us, and obviously I've probably got a little different view of how that is, but for anybody trying to spray crops or spray ground, burn down, wind has been awful in the spring of 26 here. We've done everything we can. We went out for a couple hours and then come back in for the rest of the day. Beautiful sunny day, but we can't spray because the wind's blowing 30 mile an hour. So just been kind of a struggle. We've done everything we can, weekends, anything that we can to get the crop covered. All pre-plant applications are covered at this point. I would say in Knox County, we're 90% done on corn and beans planted. Last week was what I would consider ideal conditions for planting, and a lot of corn went in last week. And that corn, and they reaped the benefits of that. These growers that planted last week went out on Mondays, pretty excited to see how fast. I started seeing some social media posts from some of my growers, and we had germination after 2 days with a little tail coming out, and we had corn up in six or 7 days. And so that was kind of ideal for what we were looking for versus what we had seen from those that went early. So I think all the crop's going to be at the same stages as we get moving forward here. It's going to be kind of a condensed version, but the planting window was so wide in our area. But We had last week before the conditions got good, we had some cold, windy days that caused a crust in our area, and that crust caused some issues with some soybeans and corn coming up. And so we started to see some rotary hose start to be pulled out of the sheds. And guys that called me, I kind of told them, let's see what this rain does. We had rain forecasted for a couple days going into the weekend, and thank goodness we had the rain come. We had 2.5-inch roughly rains in our area that really were heaven sent. I went out on Monday morning and it was just softer than all get out, and everything that was just necking or just spiking was popping through, and so sands look really good, especially in the later planted stuff for us. So one thing I want to point out with the dust storms, we haven't had a ton of dust moving. We've got a lot of no-till here, so that obviously helps, but lust blows when we don't hold it down. So just want to make sure that we continue to do the right things when those conditions are presented.
Yeah, we've had a couple ditches, road ditches, just plumb full of dust. It's not a good situation.
Yeah, not good.
Is the crusting issue, I know Stephanie's heard a little bit about that as well, and I think her area got rain too. Has that been an issue in other places across the state, Jamie or Tim, in your areas?
No, not really. We've continued to get rains, which has helped us out. Now, I will say, I mean, it looks like the forecast we've got rains next week, but some folks that did plant last week, I know where they got some heavy rains this week, there's a little bit of concern. But time will tell on that. But up to today, there really hasn't been a whole lot.
We've had a 2 tenths here, 3 tenths there, a tenth here, a tenth there, and it's been just enough to keep the soil surface moist and soft, and those crops that did struggle to get out of the ground, that was the only saving grace that we had, was that those intermittent rains really helped kind of get the crop up.
I would just add that a lot of times these crusts come from pounding rains. I don't know that we've had any real big pounding rains here. It's come from that cool soil and then the warm temperature and the winds creating our crust here in West Central Illinois. So very, very different conditions. It's really neat to hear how the state is so different from top to bottom.
I'd say right now is kind of still a waiting game. I feel like I've talked to other agronomists where they've seen emergence. It's been slow to come up, as we've alluded to here, and they say just patience to evaluate. What recommendations do you have now when evaluating once that seed comes up, in terms of whether you have to replant, repair, things like that? What recommendations are you giving? Tim, I'll start with you.
Well, replant decisions are always the most agonizing decisions. They are very difficult to make, and patching in corn rarely ever works because we often get too dense of populations where we overlap. So I think you have to look at a few things here. One is the calendar. We're at May 20th now, and even less than perfect stands are probably going to out yield things that are planted after this. And I think the big factor with corn is just making sure you don't have long gaps. Those 3 and 4 foot gaps are what really kill you on yield. And that's where you got to go evaluate. Unfortunately, I've been doing some replant evaluation on some fields that we planted, and the stand is missing in small holes. It's really not, the rest of the stand is fairly consistent, but you'll have a little hole that's empty. And so we have been trying to patch those in because, you can do that somewhat more easily when you've got a hole to fill as opposed to a patchy stand. And we really haven't seen, big issues with soybeans yet, but I didn't talk about this earlier, but we probably have at least 20% of the crop left to plant here in Effingham County because of how wet it's been. So, and that includes both corn and beans. So, I think we've still probably got some more evaluation to do coming ahead of us.
I'm just advising to be patient. Let's see what this stuff does. Let it come out, let it catch a rain, let it catch some heat, and see what we can get out of the ground. I believe the varieties that we have right now, the technology and the seed is pretty resilient when it comes to adapting to the conditions that we have. And so for corn, we've got some serious flex in the corn. Everything's a semi-flex anymore, it seems like. So I think, like Tim said, we can adapt, and with the early May planted stuff, or even late April, it's gonna still yield really well. So I think that there's still opportunity there. So be patient.
And that's the biggest thing I've always implemented as well, is just be patient, take a step back, take a breath, and really, take a look at your populations. And more times than not, your population will still yield a good amount. So,
looking ahead to June, what should growers be mindful of now heading into the next month? What's on top of mind for you as an agronomist that you want to share? Jamie, I'll go ahead and start with you.
Yeah, for us, the crop will keep progressing, at least from the conventional side on corn and soy. I think, we'll get into quite a bit of the wheat conversation, how this harvest shapes up, and then certainly double crop soybeans. And so, of course, like any year, how it has been in the last about 10 years, weed control and just, what traits folks are using within soybeans becomes kind of a larger conversation to ensure that, I'm assuming that, typically we turn off a little bit dry. I hope that we continue to get rains throughout the entire summer. But as we get drier, just making sure that we're getting that good weed control and getting those planted timely as well to really set those off. We've actually had some really good double crop soybeans in Southern Illinois the last few years. And so that's something that guys continue to look forward to, and just trying to treat those, making sure that we're getting a fungicide on those, et cetera, as we get later into the season becomes pretty critical. So that'll be a big part of the June conversation here in Southern Illinois.
Yeah, we'll see what El Nino brings this summer for sure.
Yeah, after a drought last year, hopefully we can only go up. But I know a lot of times when we get all these rains, that we just want to make sure that crop now is putting on a root system so that we can make it through the entire summer.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Jamie.
I would echo what Jamie said, and also kind of reiterate something that Brandon said earlier, which is, weed control is at the front of my mind right now, because we have a lot of fields planted that don't have pre's on them because the window was too short and we couldn't get them sprayed, and the wind has been awful. We just haven't had very many good spraying days, and so you have to wonder. Are we going to start seeing some pretty, significant weed pressure emerging on us here over the next weeks? I have noticed that some of the fields that were burned down early, hoping to plant soybeans, now have a flush of fresh water hemp emerged on them. And a lot of times vertical tillage systems won't take care of those emerged weeds. And so we're going to have to be pretty diligent, I think, on weed control going forward here.
Keep scouting, right?
Yeah, and you may have to spend some extra money, unfortunately.
Scott or Brandon, anything else to add?
Yeah, I mean, obviously here in ag retail, we're thinking about the spray and getting ready to do post here. I would echo what Tim said, that a lot of our pre's were put on early for us to protect some of the flush that we had some warmth early, and it's turned cold now. And so these weeds are kind of morphing into something that's kind of been pretty tough to kill. We've had a slow kill on all of our pre stuff. I mean, Roundup's taken 10, 12 days to even show symptomology of killing grasses and killing burn down on rye or any of the cover crops. Has been a long deal. So, I mean, like I tell a lot of my customer, we've got to stick to the plan. So in December, we make these plans and we plan for the worst and hope for the best is kind of my motto here. And so we stick to our plan, make sure that we're continue to not pull down on some of our rates, make sure we're staying where we need to be to make sure that we're killing these flushes of water hemp and some of the other weeds that we're struggling with. So with the weather changes, I've got a pullover this morning. It's cold again this morning, so these weeds are they're fighting the same battle, and so is our herbicide. So we just need to. So for me, is to make sure that we do a good job on this post pass. That's our last shot at getting this crop through the season, and we're still somewhat early, so that concerns me a little bit. I think in soybeans it just continues to be a struggle. How are we going to kill these weeds? And so that's at the forefront of my mindset. And you said it, Kelsey, scout. We need to be out there in the fields, seeing what's going on. We didn't have ideal conditions like we've had in the past several years. And I think we need to continue to be out in the fields checking our crops to make sure that nothing's a surprise. It shouldn't be a surprise if we're out in our fields. So that's my take.
Scott, round us up here. What's top of your mind?
For me, in pre-commercial world, for me, top of mind is obviously scouting and getting into the field. And when I'm doing that, I'm looking for seedling and seed diseases like Phytophthora. Obviously, in my world, that's something we try to weed out before anything goes commercial. So it's not a huge issue for guys on the commercial side, but that is something that I'm looking for in varieties that have a heavy hit on seedling and seed diseases. Obviously, with the patchiness of the weather, in some areas getting 6 inches in a month, and some getting only 1, that'll be variant, but that's something that's on top of my mind right now.
And you're talking about the trials you do, correct?
Yeah, the experimental, the varieties that we produce and the experimentals, and along with the commercial checks that we have in those fields.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting year for trials, definitely.
For sure, yeah.
But anything else?
I have one small update. Last time we talked a little bit about frost, and I did hear a report of one guy replanting about 60 acres that had frost damage. Granted, he's a 13,000, 14,000 acre farm, so it was small replant for him, but out of all that acres, the only acreage he replanted was that frost damage of 60 acres. So,
do you know what when he planted versus when he replanted?
I don't.
Just curious if it was...
I heard it secondhand, so I didn't get to ask too many details, but that's what I heard from his cooperator. So
I would say that I'm surprised that we haven't had more frost damage in our area. I think the crop was stalling underground just long enough for us in our area. But I have seen, Kelsey, I got some reports yesterday of some emergence where, corn is coming up. It's hit its stride, and then that corn plant's going like sideways. So I think guys are starting to see some of that and getting excited. Again, some of that is dependent on how much of it we need to make some decisions. But I think a lot of guys in our area, Kelsey, they just get excited. They want to be out in the fields.
Yeah.
And
who can blame them?
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, it's fun playing in the soil, but we just get a little too excited, and they want to go out and piece those things in. And I don't know if they want to get their planters cleaned up and put them back away or what, but yeah, no, I think that's the big decision here coming up is what do these final stands look like? How does it look? And then do we need to piece some stuff in? But Tim alluded to it. I think our stands are good enough that we're going to be able to adapt.
Brandon said it earlier, have patience. I pray for it every day. It's a hard thing to do when the planter's been parked. My soybean planter has been parked 30 days, and I am excited. I need, I'm watching the calendar click day after day. I want to get that thing out of the shed and go. It just has not been fit to do so. And, it doesn't pay to punch it in adverse conditions like that. Like you alluded to, Kelsey, you're going to compromise the end result. And in, this economic environment, you just can't afford to make that mistake.
Yeah. I think that's an excellent way to put it. And to in this episode. So Scott, Tim, Brandon, Matt, and Jamie, who are also on earlier, thank you guys for taking time to share the updates from your field. And we'll do this again here in about a month or so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, and stay safe out there.
Thanks for listening to the Field Advisor Podcast. Unbiased, independent agronomy information to keep your farm moving forward. I'm Kelsey Litchfield, your voice from the field. This podcast is funded by the Illinois Soybean Association Checkoff Program. Stay connected with Field Advisor on social media. Follow, like, and share to keep the conversation going. And don't forget to subscribe to the Field Advisor Podcast on your favorite podcast platform.